So
you set backups of it.
Yeah, so you know, I just spent 20 minutes restoring from backup and restoring the table, and it, you know, it was fine. It was just, you know, it was just stressful. Yeah.
there's, I think with Aurora or something like that, you can actually tell it to do point in time snapshots and recovery and basically rewind history if you want. I think Aurora does that now, and so anytime you're about to do something that you think might be kind of risky on prod, just snapshot it.
Yeah, I mean, I can do snapshots. Is what you're talking about, what you're saying is like an automatic kind of thing or something?
No, I'm saying, well, you can turn on the feature to log in.
Streaming, and then
and I think you may actually be able to just do it point in time recovery once you turn it on.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
But I could have done that. Like I could have done a snapshot just before running it, which would have been a good idea. Because I just go to AWS and like, you know, just say create a snapshot.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah, the issue kind of had to do with, so I have a column in the database that's actually an array. So, you know, so I'm doing like, I think it's like the cast kind of thing where, you know, the top of the model says like, you know, this field is cast to an array and it's actually stored as JSON. The tricky thing was then searching the database by that field, which I guess is maybe just not easy to do in that case.
Is it actually, are you running MySQL 5.7 or above?
It's not stored as a JSON data type. It
doesn't matter.
Okay.
You can use the JSON functions on strings.
Yeah.
So if you're running 5.7 or above, don't. If you have a column with JSON in it, doesn't matter what the data type is. Yeah, it'll run a little bit more slowly on strings, but all your JSON functions will totally work on strings. I know this from experience.
Okay. So I'd have to do that as so if I'm doing that in Laravel, you know, there's not like
you're gonna have to do it in actual queries.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah, it's just never fun having a day where you screw something up.
No.
Wait, there are days where you don't.
Well, usually the website's not down. It's not in a big way. And actually, it didn't affect all the customers. It was a portion of them, but it was still, I don't know. Actually, it's very rare this happens, but like earlier this week, I did something else where I screwed something up for good little bits.
Pizza's here. Feel free to grab some.
Yeah, thanks.
We have a lot of it, and none of it I can eat, so please eat it. And we've got some brownie things. That was cool.
Is that new? Brownies?
Whenever Review Bush sponsors, he usually gets the pizzas and brownies.
Who's the sponsor?
Review Bush. I don't know if we necessarily need 3 pizzas from Review Bush on the night, so there's a lot of pizza for you to have and take home. So please eat it. I'm sure somebody's already thought of this joke, but the website being down on it, isitdown.com. And then there's a part of me that wants to buy isalwaysdown.com and just have the web page always just throw a 500 error. Is that a good use of money? No. Would it be entertaining to about 5 people?
Sounds like a good idea.
Well, what you could do is that could be a thing for Captain Portal for Wi-Fi. If it's 500s, then you know that your Wi-Fi is good. If it doesn't 500,
Then you know it's
then
not.
you know that you've got Captain Portal. But
I wish everyone would standardize the Captain Portals whenever you have that instance where the Captain Portal is supposed to pop up automatically, and then it
Yeah, and sometimes the capture portal detection it is hit or miss. Like when I was on the bus just now, I had to disconnect from the Wi-Fi and reconnect for it to realize, oh, there's a capture portal here.
Yeah.
That was an Android issue. It wasn't actually with the capture portal at all.
But I mean so like Android phones, most phones detect that, but then if you're on like Windows or maybe Mac, like if you're in Chrome or something.
If you're in Chrome, well, so both Chrome and Firefox at least on Linux on here, will detect if there's a capture portal. Mac OS definitely does it.
Yeah, I think it's on
I'm
Mac
not
OS.
certain on Windows because the last time I booted this into Windows on a capture portal was a while back.
Yeah.
But certainly Linux and Mac will pick it up.
Yeah, I
And
think
the browsers will pick it up.
I think Windows doesn't. I know at least not that long ago I needed to like find a non-HTTPS website to go to get it.
NeverSSL.com.
What is that?
NeverSSL.com.
Yeah, all right, good. There you go. Because it used to be there were so many sites that like, oh, I'll just go to I don't know Yahoo or whatever, but like now everything's HTTPS.
And then Google did their Google thing, and suddenly everything's HTTPS now.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
and HTTP2 came out that's only HTTPS, and it's such a big performance improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is with the or what do you say it is?
HTTP2
Yeah.
is only available over TLS,
Yeah.
which means that if you want the performance benefits of that, then you have to run TLS.
Yeah.
And at this point, with Let's Encrypt, it's trivial to do, so yeah.
Yeah. I'm kind of of the opinion that I don't know, I'm not thrilled with the fact that I did that, but I know nobody agrees with me on that. But like I think it'd be kind of nice if like if you read like there's some sites that don't have to be SSH. There's not many. I know nobody.
Would you like to be in the middle?
What do you mean?
On literally any site, if it's not running over transport layer security, then you are at the mercy of whatever network that you're on, or whatever network that you think you're on, but it's actually somebody's freaking pineapple router sitting there to inject malicious content.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
That,
I mean,
that alone is a compelling reason to fight for every single freaking site being over TLS, except for NeverSSL.com for capture portals.
That's a good point. I guess most people make an argument related to privacy, but it's interesting to talk about injection.
No, it's very much a deal of the privacy things are a big deal, but it's more about the integrity of whatever you're trying to visit.
Yeah. By the way, like, is there any technical reason why? You know, like if you're on a Wi-Fi network with a password, then it can be an encrypted connection. But there's not a password, it's not encrypted. But could it be encrypted without a password? Like I guess the standard just didn't kind of work that way, but it's not technically possible.
I mean, you could. Well,
sorry, I know we got to start the meeting. So
no.
I'm waiting for somebody to get back from there.
I mean, that's. You don't need a password to connect to an HTTPS website. So there's certainly the ability to.
No, I was talking about like Wi-Fi.
Right, I'm saying the same principle applies.
Oh, right, yeah.
But the
I'm going to spread up.
the standards don't work that way.
Yeah. That's kind of too bad. Like it's bad.
Start
You
on
can't
slides.
both, you know.
There's a lot of uses apparently.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah, I forgot to realize looking at it, I was like, I forgot to toggle off some of my fit tags to fit the heading on the slide,
But,
so figure that these things are.
That's okay.
But you're right that there is value to having a secure wireless network as of WPA2 or better, even if you know the password, even if everybody knows the password.
Well, yeah, because it's still encrypted.
Well, because so WPA and WEP use the same session key for all clients connected. WPA2 and above actually has one key per device, such that you can't snoop somebody else's traffic.
Yeah.
even if you're connected to the network, unless if you have network isolation on the router.
Yeah.
Which, if you're on a public network, they better have network isolation on.
No.
They probably don't, but whatever.
You can only go. All right, I think everyone who's going to be here is here. So, welcome to the first Laravel Austin Meetup of 2019. My favorite sponsors, yay! Our sponsors, Review Push, for providing the copious amounts of pizza and desserts and soda. Thank you very much for Review Push. Some housekeeping and calendar stuff, though this will be longer than it usually is, since it's the beginning of the year. So we've got the PHP Austin, or Austin PHP, depending on how you want to say it, meetup next Thursday, January 10th. I don't know the topic yet. Do you?
I'm trying to, I need to contact Logan and figure out whether the person who's going to talk about, who was going to talk about stuff last time, is going to talk about stuff this time because he missed last time. If not, then I need to probably throw something together about running PHP on Lambda.
Got it. So it's either going to be
Security related stuff or PHP on Lambda.
both awesome topics. I highly recommend checking the meetup out. The next Laravel Austin meetup will be next month, February 7th. We've got on the line of conferences, Sunshine PHP is February 7th to the 9th. So if you're going to Sunshine, we obviously won't be seeing you next meetup, but I'm sure you'll have a fantastic time at Sunshine.
You can really join in on the stream though.
Yeah, you could join on the stream if you really want to. Ian, are you speaking at Sunshine this year?
I am.
So Ian will be speaking, so you can check out the talk he'll be giving. And then it would be stupid of me to not mention the conference that I am currently part of the organizing committee of, even though it's still a bit of a ways out there. But we're doing Longhorn PHP again. If you're not familiar with Longhorn PHP, it is a Austin-based PHP conference. Our first one was last year in 2018, and we're hoping to have an even better one this year. The blind bird tickets are still available, so if you want to get the tickets at the cheapest price you can.
Then buy them now because I've already sent out a whole bunch of speaker acceptance emails, and as soon as everybody responds back and we get the schedule aligned, then those blind bird tickets are going away.
Yep, and then they'll be a little bit more expensive, and they'll get even more expensive right before the conference. So.
A couple other conferences, PHP Benelux is at the end of this month. If you can somehow find a cheap ticket to Brussels, and then take a car or train over to Antwerp. And then Just PHP in Phoenix area is late February, like the 22nd. You could actually fly in the morning of, first flight in to the conference and then fly back that night if you were really a masochist. But that's put on by Jeremy Lindblom, which means it's going to be a freaking awesome conference. It's a one-day deal. And Midwest PHP in Minneapolis is early March.
Awesome.
So yeah, those are things.
A lot of conferences coming up. And technically, last year, February 7th, is when Laracon Online happened, but they haven't announced another Laracon Online, so I don't know if either they're just not doing it again, or they're just behind the ball on finalizing details and announcing it. So potentially in February there'll be a Laracon Online, maybe. I'll let y'all know more once it gets announced and in time for the next meetup. But
When's the main Laracon?
I think it's in like July, typically. Yeah, I think it's July for US and August for EU.
Okay.
I've always wanted to speak at one of those, but I'm not cool enough in the Laravel community, so that's never going to happen. But on the topics of calendar, there's a few things the meetup's going to be doing differently this year related to schedule, both topic-wise and actual dates that we'll be meeting. So I want to show y'all the very hastily thrown together using Preview, because I don't have access to Photoshop and also I suck at making graphs, the rough calendar outline for what I'm calling mega topics will be for this year. So to start off the year, from January to March, we'll be talking about framework internals. From April to June, we'll be focusing on very front-end heavy presentations. July through September will be very database focused, and then we'll end the year October through December talking all about testing. And I have a bit of a breakdown for some talks. So for framework internals, obviously tonight we'll be talking about internal events. And I'm still working out general topic ideas for February and March, either presenting myself or having a guest speaker. But I'm hoping to have that soon. Once I get to the end of the breakdown, I'll kind of leave where the question marks will make sense to where I'm leading with this. One thing you'll notice is that for the month of March, we'll actually be meeting on a Monday. So this year we got really unlucky and had about 3 different months where we basically our meetup landed on days that like conflicted with Capital Factory events. For example, I believe March is colliding with Startup Games or Startup Week or something something at Capital Factories. So instead of moving the meetup to the following week and fighting with Austin PHP for members, or just canceling it, which sucks for everyone involved, the best day that was available on that week still with Capital Factory was Monday. Then we dive into front end. I do not have topics yet. We briefly talked about Vue.js and Tailwind CSS near the back half of last year. So my general idea is that one of these 3 will probably be React related. I don't know what the other 2 will be yet. Maybe something on progressive web apps or something. But for those 3 months, our schedule stays fairly the same. Then we hit our database section. For July 1st, a Monday, we'll be having a presentation roughly around advanced SQL, utilizing Laravel's query builder, and advanced Eloquent usage. Once again, this was not a collided with a Capital Factory event. This was the meetup landed on 4th of July. So Capital Factory's not open. I would not expect any of y'all to give up fireworks to come to the meetup, even if it was open. So had to move the meetup to that Monday. August, something around Postgres versus MySQL, your pros and cons of each, and why it would make sense to use one over the other. And then some mystery topics still to be determined for September. And finishing up the year, October 3rd is still going to be a Thursday, but there is literally no days the week of October 3rd that work for Capital Factory, and I did not want to move into the previous week for the same reason of fighting for attendance with Austin PHP, and if I pushed it back any further, we'd have 2 meetups real quick back to back, which just with my schedule I don't have time to prepare for, and I can, if you don't have as much time to go to meetups as you want to, I can see that being difficult to justify taking time out of your evenings to do 2 of them basically back to back. So my idea is what we did last year, pick a different location. As much, it'd be awesome if the company I work for, a sponsor of the meetup, could still host it, and I know they absolutely would. The issue is, and why attendance honestly was kind of not there, was my office doesn't have parking dedicated to it. It's an older building. So we have no parking to validate. So as soon as it starts going from paid or cheap validated parking, I can understand people not wanting to mess with that in downtown Austin. So my goal is to try and identify a location that accomplishes both parking and easy to get to, and downtown still. One of our sponsors is actually, last time I checked, officed where my old company used to be across the street, and they have a parking garage. So if I can work things out with pull request, we'll just be across the street and have validated parking for them. As for the topic, I'm not sure yet what it's going to be. Immediately I'm trying to think of a topic that'd be awesome to still attract people to come to it, even though I moved the locations on us. Around November, thinking of doing CI automation, question mark, as in I don't exactly know what that means yet, outside of either doing a talk on the different CI tools available to you and how to set up your your project to run builds through the various providers and run your test. And then finally, we'll end off the year with a lighter topic around debugging, and that will basically just be around what are the various debug tools available to you, ranging from debug bar to xdebug. So I hope this is awesome, something you'll like. In the past couple of years, it's been kind of just fly by the seat of my pants, like pick the topics as I'm going, but this year I wanted to try and make things a little bit more standardized, just make the meetup better, etc. So if this goes off well, you'll be seeing the mega topics recurring from here on out. So the question marks, the mystery topics. Tonight, when I get home, my plan is to actually utilize Meetup.com's discussion board feature for the first time in like 5 years, and use that some way, somehow to create a discussion point, which I will link on the Meetup page and tweet out about it, to get feedback to fill in these gaps of topic ideas for the mega topics. Because I would much rather we present on things that y'all would like to learn about or are interested in than me potentially presenting on things that no one cares about, or me getting a guest speaker to present on something that people don't really care about. So I'll create that soon. If you've got some ideas that fit under the umbrellas I mentioned, or I don't think any of my mega topics are fully filled out, but if you have additional ideas outside of the ones that I've already mentioned, please throw them out there anyway, because I'd rather replace an idea that I came up with very quickly talking to like Eric and Ian and maybe one other person in December after our meetup was over, than potentially miss the mark. So I'll be commenting on the Meetup page soon about that and tweeting about it. I'd love to get y'all's feedback and have some awesome topics. But that's all I got for housekeeping. That's the calendar. That's what the year's going to look like for talks. Let's get started with the first one. Once I find my mouse. Ta-da! All right, so tonight we're going to be talking about the framework's internal events. As a quick refresher, for those of you that are wondering, what are events again? Ripping this from the documentation, Laravel's events provide a simple observer implementation, allowing you to subscribe and listen for various events that occur in your application. So effectively, events serve as a nice way to decouple various aspects of your application due to the fact that one event can have multiple listeners. As an example, also ripped from the documentation, say you want to send a Slack notification to your user each time an order has been shipped. Obviously, you wouldn't want to couple your Slack notification code to your order ship, like shipping order shipping code, whatever that looks like. So instead, you can, in that logic, just dispatch an event called order shipped. And that's it. You have an event called order shipped, and then from there, you can build a listener that actually turns that event into a Slack notification to your user, or another listener for sending an email. And you can attach as many listeners that make sense to your application to this single event, and all of that logic for the different listeners and the different things you want to accomplish is not coupled to your order logic, which is awesome. So, what events does Laravel come with? A lot of them. So across all the Illuminate sub packages, Laravel has events that are within the Illuminate auth, cache, console, database, foundation, log, mail, notifications, and there's supposed to be more, but I think the street size cut it off. But we'll go over them in a minute. Okay, let's see. Notifications. Q, Redis, and that might be the two that I'm missing. So, what are some of those events within the various Illuminate sub-packages? Well, auth, I think, has the most, if I remember correctly. You've got attempting, authenticated, failed, lockout, login, logout, password reset, and registered. All right, I think something's wrong with my setup. So some of the uses for, I kind of left a tag on that fits the header with the content. So you're going to see some very large uses followed by occasional bullet points. So out of the auth events, a plain-ish installation of Laravel only really utilizes the registered event to send user verification emails when appropriate. So if you're using Laravel's built-in auth system and your user is implementing the interface, I think it's like must send email or verify email, then whenever this registered event fires, whenever a user registers, Laravel will correctly hook into and have a listener to listen to the event and turn it into an email from the user. Under the cache namespace, we have cache hit, cache missed, key forgotten, key written. Some of the uses that Laravel comes with out of the box are actually none for cache, but Telescope, that's where the plain-ish installation comes in. And I'm still using my Telescope testing app. Telescope actually utilizes all of the events I just mentioned to record everything in Telescope's dashboard that's cache related. So you can debug and monitor how your application's cache is performing. Under the console namespace, we have artisan starting, command finished, and command starting. Some of the uses for these events come from, once again, Telescope is only using these at the moment. It utilizes the command finish event and command starting to record various console command metrics. So for command finished, it uses that to one of them it's used to record scheduled commands executing, which is command start, and command finish just utilizes it to show which commands were actually run on your console during like a request to your application and what the output was from that command. Under the database events namespace, we have query executed, statement prepared, transaction beginning, transaction committed, and transaction rollback. Some of the uses of these, Laravel's documentation suggests utilizing the query executed event to implement query logging. There's an example, there's a bit of a smaller, like more streamlined example that I'll show later on in the presentation of how you can utilize this. And then obviously, you'll be seeing this a lot. Telescope actually utilizes the query execute command as well to accomplish its query logs that show up in the dashboard. And then the rest of the events are just not being used. So you can hook into your various states of a transaction, but at the moment, nothing Laravel's doing is watching it. These various namespaces, only have like one event per. So Illuminate Foundation, which if you're not familiar with Illuminate Foundation, is the one Illuminate package you can't actually compose or install. You can compose or install every single Illuminate package into a separate project except for Foundation. Foundation is basically where the core of the Laravel application in various classes lives. And one of those, and the only event, is locale updated. Foundation HTTP has request handled, and then I've got a configuration issue on my slides that I'm very tempted to fix very quickly. Is the Illuminate log events has a event name by the name of log written, so you can just hook into whenever your logger actually writes a log to wherever wrote to. As for the uses, Laravel utilizes locale updated to update Carbon's locale, so that if you're switching to a different language, your Carbon will out of the box be correctly set to use, like if your application does like locale switching and it needs to show like all of its default date formatting needs to be off of like French, for example, it will use the locale updated event to ensure that Carbon has also updated its locale, so you don't have to do it yourself, and you can just write your Carbon interactions as you would, and you'll be good to go. Telescope utilizes the request handled event to record any request made to your application. Fairly straightforward. So it's not logged, it was messaged. Messaged logged, I think it's actually supposed to be message, I just fat fingered an extra D. But Telescope uses the message logged both to record any exceptions or logs that occur within your application and surface them to the dashboard. So it has a bit of logic to basically check that if the message logged has an exception tied to it, it'll route it to the exceptions recording. Otherwise, it'll route to the just general log recording. It's a nice way within Telescope to be able to see like if you have a bunch of like debug or info outputs that could be helpful for debugging an issue. Telescope will allow you to see all those within its dashboard, and then obviously exceptions will go there as well. Next, we've got the Illuminate Mail and Illuminate Notifications namespaces. Under Mail, we have message sending, notification, or message sent, sorry. And then for notifications, we have broadcast notification created, notification failed, and I think I just figured out why. Cut it off. Oh, that's why. Ignore the man behind the curtain. I swear there's still more. I'm going to real quick reference this because I am drawing a blank and it's not auto-scaling like it's supposed to. So for notifications, there's notification failed, sending, and sent. And I'm going to have to figure out how I messed that one up. For uses, Laravel's mailer will utilize the message sending event to determine if it should actually send the message. Telescope utilizes message sent to record any email sent by your application. Laravel's notification sender utilizes the notification sending event to determine if it should send a notification or not. And then finally, Telescope utilizes notification sent to record sent notifications. Now, to clarify the message sending or notification sending and how the classes behind, like either the mailer or notification sender, use those events to determine if it should actually send it or not. So what Laravel is actually doing is it's dispatching those events utilizing it's effectively a helper method that just wraps the dispatch method and just forces a parameter to true. But Laravel's event dispatching has this functionality where you can tell it to halt the second a listener for an event returns a non-null value. So say you've got listeners on message sending to like verify certain things are correct about it, like strip, like, I don't know, like strip bad words out of it if somebody was being a smart ass, or
There's a bad word.
yeah, exactly, there's a bad word, or verify something on, like verify the email is correct before you actually send the message.
Right.
If the listener from one of those like, fails the verification, your listener can actually return false. The second your like a listener returns false, even if there was like 50 other listeners that need to go over that event, they will never be touched. The event dispatcher will immediately halt the rest of the listeners, return that value up, and the mailer and notification sender classes are basically checking for if this did halt and returned a value, is it false? If it's not false, then whatever, we don't care, we should still send the email. But if it did return false, something's wrong with the message we're about to send, we should not actually send it. So it's a way for you to basically build in various checks on your notifications and emails, and short circuit sending if something's wrong. It just took me a second to read that because it was a bit funky reading the code, and as I typed out the use, I was like, that's not the clearest thing. So it's a bit of an interesting approach to using the events and event dispatching, but now that I know it exists, it's actually kind of cool the more I think about it. Also, if you don't mind, I'm going to real quick take a quick pause because the fact that my content is not auto-scaling is really annoying me because it's cutting off a bunch of stuff for y'all. Oh, that's why. Some directives have hyphens and others don't, but there's no consistency as to which one has which. All right.
That looks right.
Yeah, it got a little bit smaller, but that's because it's actually auto-scaling all the content now, fit on the slide. Isn't that something? Sorry about the previous slides, I can go back and revisit them in a few. So the queue cache, the queue namespace for events has the following events. We've got job exception occurred, job failed, job processed, job processing, looping, worker stopping. So what are the uses for these? The queue work command utilizes job processing, job processed, and job failed to write output to the terminal for the various job states. So if you've ever looked at the output for the queue work command, and you'll see it will say like starting job, whatever, like ID, like finished job, whatever ID, or if it's failed, all that output is entirely powered by the events that the actual queue worker dispatches through the various states. Telescope will utilize the above plus the job exception occurred event for recording and storing jobs that have been worked by your queue. And the queue worker utilizes the looping event as part of its daemon should run logic. It's the same thing as I just described with the mailer and the sender. You can actually listen to the looping event, and I don't exactly know why or what you would want to do, but if you want to stop the daemon from running for the queue work command, you can basically do the same thing. Have a listener listening to the looping event and return false. Then we've got Redis and Routing. Both of these don't have as many events, so condense them in the one slide. Redis just has command executed. Whenever you execute a command against Redis, it will fire off this event with what the command was, and I think a few more details. And if you've been following along with the telescope pattern, you might know where the uses slide is going in a moment. And then Illuminate Routing has a route matched event. Uses. So command executed. It's utilized by the Redis watcher in Telescope to record commands executed by Redis during request to your application. Pretty straightforward. It's just used for logging. The route matched event is not actually utilized by the framework, which is intriguing. So that's all the events, and I actually am going to real quick skip back to where this started falling apart. So here's all the off events, except for I actually missed one, and here's the other two that were cut off by my auto-scaling being incorrectly set up. So we got registered, and you've also got verified. These all, well, basically, attempting is when they were trying to log in. Authenticated is when, I believe, like the authentication is successful. Failed is obviously when it fails. Lockout is what the event that's fired if the user attempts to log in too many times in quick succession and fails. There's a login event for when they successfully logged in. There's a login event when they successfully log out. Password reset, self-explanatory. Registered, self-explanatory. And verified is the event that is fired whenever the user successfully does their email verification, if you're utilizing email verification. Let's see, what are some of the other ones that got cut off? Oh, yeah. So, foundation, look how it press handle, message log, all right. I think that's most of them. Sorry about that. So, how can you use them? So these are just a few examples. Obviously, you don't have to do these. They're rough ideas. The first one's pretty straightforward. Query logging, like I mentioned before, the documentation actually gives this rough code snippet of how you can debug the queries being ran in your application. This db listen method is actually a basically like a nice like syntax sugar underneath the hood. Listen is actually just doing this event's listen, query executed, and then this callback is passed as the what the listener actually is, since you can register closure listeners. So, and then the query event, obviously, it has a lot more than this actually, but the main things you'll probably care about if you're doing query logging is just the actual SQL string, any bindings that are present, and then how much time it took to run the query. Metrics monitoring. This is where the auto-scale kind of hurts me a little bit, but it's weird turning it on and off. As you saw, I couldn't even get it to correctly turn on for the beginning of the presentation. So you could, there's a lot of events I talked about. I'm just highlighting cache miss and cache hit, but like I said, there's a ton you could tie into for this to log various like monitoring data somewhere to basically like check on the health of your application. This example is using Laravel's event subscriber pattern. So if you have a lot of events that are going through like a very like similar logic, in this case we're going to be monitoring stability, all of the same class. Instead of creating like 7 listener classes that all have the same dependency injected, that are all roughly doing the same thing, you can use a subscriber class, which just has, you define your methods on how you want to handle the various events. So in this case, I have one for on-cache hit and one for on-cache miss. The subscriber class has to have a subscribe method that will actually take in an instance of the events dispatcher, and then you just call events listen event, the class we're currently in, at the method name. Cache miss, same thing. So basically it gives you a way to kind of like bundle and bulk register listeners all within the same class. Utilizing the same pattern, oh boy, that got real small. I'll kind of explain this. So this is the class I can't name things, something with users subscriber, because I can't name things. But say you want to aggregate various statistics about the users of your application. So obviously, depending on your table structure and everything, you could probably get this data doing like count by ID, like count IDs and grouping and all this stuff. But depending on the volume of data you get, that could potentially get slow, especially if you don't have the proper indexing, and it still can be a little bit slow with the proper indexing. Or you can just create a different either table or system entirely where you just subscribe to all these events. In this example, you want to track like logins by day, new registered users by day, and maybe you're curious about how many people are keep forgetting their passwords and having to reset their passwords. You can have this subscriber class register to all 3 of these events, and then within the class actually push like effectively, if it's a table, like a statistics table, you would just be like insert or update record for today, total plus total, like total equals total plus 1, and just count how many logins, how many registered users, how many password resets you get, or push it into some other data structure that makes sense, like Redis or something, so that you can have nice, pretty, basically real-time dashboards of like, hey, we can actually see that like a lot of users are returning and logging in, and maybe you want to track logout so you can show like session time length, et cetera, for how long your users are on your application. And then the request logger, thankfully I abbreviated this one a lot so that it doesn't get too small. So there's the route matched event that I mentioned earlier that's actually not being used by the framework anywhere, but we can use it to basically build a listener so that every time a request comes in and it gets matched, you'll be able to log data. Say, for example, you're curious, what are the most popular endpoints of my application? Say it's an API and you're kind of curious what your most trafficked endpoints are, or you're curious, like, you don't want to give Google any more data, so you want to have like basically your own sort of version of like Google Analytics and at least see like page popularity. You could use route match to actually log that data somewhere, say like Elasticsearch, of when a route was matched, and actually have the route data. So you can actually see like, oh, the home page, no-brainer, is the most popular. And then followed by that is the pricing page, and then yada, 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 yada. Basically, I would use this to build a semi-replacement to RunScope, since they took away their most popular favorite feature for reasons. Jerks. So I could at least get half of the picture through here. And actually, no, think about it. There's route matched, which is before the request is actually processed. And then I believe the other event was request handled that came from Foundation that might actually have the response data after it handled the request to where it was supposed to go. So theoretically, with those two, you could actually log the inbound request with the data and the route it wound up on, and then use the other event to actually log the response that was generated and all the data to that, and complete the picture and have your own RunScope replacement. There's actually another way to do this that it's never been important enough to talk about at the meetup that I've done successfully at 2 different companies, but this is a nice event-based approach. So those are all the events and the various ways the framework utilizes them. It's kind of surprising how many events exist but aren't currently being utilized by the framework. But I'd say surprising in a good way, because these events have actually existed for a lot longer than Telescope came about. So either Taylor had the idea for Telescope brewing for a long time and knew the way he wanted to approach it was hooking into events without having to like rework half the framework. So he just future-proofed himself years back and added all these events and dispatched them. Or since they've not like always been here, maybe he had the idea for Telescope and brought them in somewhere in 5. I didn't actually look back to see when these started showing up. But either way, it's kind of actually nice that all these events exist but aren't currently being utilized, because it means either Taylor or other package developers can hook into them and provide functionality to your framework without you having to do any like intrusive wiring yourself, which is nice. An example, the route matched is actually utilized by the Bugsnag package. If you use their Laravel package to hook up to their like error reporting, they'll actually use the route matched event plus the configuration option to determine if it should start their version of session tracking, so you can actually log session data for like authenticated users, yada yada, with any exceptions that may occur during your application. And that's actually the only one I know of that's outside of Telescope, because the application I'm testing just only has those things. So it's nice that it's future-proofed. It gives us a lot of events that we can tie into as developers to add nice functionality to our application without having to like keep our code super coupled. And obviously it's empowered packages like Telescope, and obviously all the queue events are utilized by Horizon. So it allows those to exist. So hey, if you've already got your Horizon type dashboard that was built internally like years ago, so there's no reason to move to Horizon for like queue monitoring and whatever else you're doing, screw it. Use the Laravel events and just hook those events into your dashboard to have the mega metrics dashboard. But does anybody have any questions for me?
Any type of performance hit or a serious performance hit?
It depends on what you're doing in the listener. So,
listeners are executed synchronously.
Yes.
Synchronously, so it's really a question of if you open the listener up, what are you doing in here? Because that's going to anything that's actually executing the listener is going to block again.
yeah. So they are synchronous. Unfortunately, we're not at the point where PHP has the fancy asynchronicity that like Hack has, for example, our closest cousin. But Laravel does provide a way for your listeners to be asynchronous in a sense. So 9 times out of 10, as long as you do like a opcache and you're running on PHP 7.3 and all that, your listeners running synchronously are not really going to impact your performance by a lot. Like it'll probably be like fractions of a millisecond or a millisecond or two at most, unless you're doing like really memory intensive things. But if at any point in time your listener is going to potentially make an HTTP call or something of that nature, that might be where it makes sense to utilize Laravel's queued listeners. So you can still listen to the event, you'll still get the event, but what it'll do is it'll synchronously process, identify that the listener, like the real listener, is supposed to be queued, and it will push onto the queue a like special job that has like a queue listener, so that when the queue works it actually like builds up, figures out like here's the event, here's the real thing I'm supposed to do, build these both, populate data, mash, and handle. So for example, we're using event dispatching. We've just recently built something modernized called the Mod Messenger. It's basically like a fancy like email web chat bridge so that homeowners can talk to contractors and vice versa. So whenever messages are created, we fire off a message created event, and then our like email bridge piece actually hooks into and pushes a queued event to actually turn that message into an email that goes to the correct party, so that we can basically, as fast as possible, return the data from the API and then do the other slow stuff later.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Ian, you used a listener on the GitFit Texas project, right?
That was the model server, so a little bit different.
Okay.
Yeah, the documentation does something interesting where I very quickly identified a rabbit hole I was going to fall down and backed away slowly. But the documentation actually from here mentions it provides a simple observer implementation, but if you start looking into like that exact phrasing. The observer, there's a difference between like your event, like typical event architecture, and your observer pattern. This is one of those cases where Laravel kind of has one thing but calls it another that unfortunately also is a thing because it's just simpler.
To the extent that there was enough of a flame war around, the misnaming events as stuff that they aren't and people arguing over definitions of words was enough to have Symphony step out of PHP Fig over the event-related stuff.
Yeah.
Because naming things is hard.
Yeah. So this is pretty close to like the observer pattern. Like, the Laravel's events is the observer pattern, and then Laravel also has jobs, which is a slight difference. And actually, I'm now kind of curious to basically do a follow me as we look into why the hell there's two concepts that are both dispatchable but are named differently. And I'm gonna actually do that. But there's also the like, I'm forgetting the word. It's like it's event something pattern. It's the Tom gave a talk about it like a year or two ago, where all your data is just a pain in the ass to look at because everything that happens to anything is logged as an event, so you can roll back and rewind and forward your data. I can't remember the name. I'm actually going to bring it up real quick. Events, observer pattern. Event-driven approach, or event-driven. That's, I couldn't remember driven, apparently. I'm back from vacation as of this week. My brain's still waking up. That's where it gets a little bit confusing. But in case you're curious, so Laravel does have what we talked about tonight. These things called events. Everything we've gone over. And then where you have this hidden. So there's events that can be dispatched and typically live within the application and fire synchronously, but can be queued and pushed onto the queue. And then there's jobs, which are specifically related to queue. And that's it. So you've got a queue, like if you have a thing that you know for sure is going to go onto a queue, like the example the documentation mentions here is process podcast. I don't know what process podcast is doing, but obviously a podcast needs to be processed. So it's going to be a long-running thing, so you can create jobs that are always queued, and then jobs have their handler still? No. So jobs, this is where it was confusing. So it used to be confusing a few versions back because both events and jobs could also have listeners to each other, and then Taylor finally stopped the madness. So jobs are basically self-contained events, but also the listener all in one class that gets pushed onto the queue. Events are different in the sense of you have an event that just has data in it and it gets fired, and if no one's listening, whatever. But if people are listening, the listeners will do the thing it needs to do to whatever with the event. And if it's a long-running thing it needs to do, you can push it onto the queue as well. It makes things a little bit confusing. And also, like I mentioned earlier, there are job events for when a job is processing or processed that you can listen to, and then we go full circle, as I mentioned that earlier. Telescope uses them, and you can use them yourself. Horizon definitely uses job processing and job processed along with the other key commands for its dashboard. So if you do wind up using events and jobs, just realize one doesn't have to be queued but can, the other one is always queuable. more you know. Any other questions? Any other generic Laravel questions? All right, then that's all I've got. Thanks for coming out tonight, everybody. Appreciate it. I'll be creating that discussion post soon of getting feedback on different topic ideas that we can present about throughout the year, and hope to see y'all more. If not here, at Longhorn PHP. Plug, 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 plug. Shameless plug. That's all I got. Thanks, everybody. So we do have a bunch of the sausage pizza, the entire cheese pizza, and all of the brownies still. I can literally eat none of this because I have celiacs, so it's not coming home with me. Please eat it. Otherwise, I've got to make the trip back to my office just to dump stuff in the fridge.
Yes, I'll eat some brownies.
Yay!
So if there's any interest, and to avoid you having to do every single freaking presentation, I could probably do one on the container.
Which one?
Just on the IOC container.
Oh yeah, that's actually very true. You're pretty well versed in those types of things. So yes, consider you on the ropes.
Can't do it in February because I'm going to be in Miami.
Yeah, you're gonna be busy.
You're going to be where?
Oh, I just forgot to mention. So y'all will know this, and more people will know. So actually, I need to let Califax know. The meetup in May, coincidentally enough, coincides with Longhorn PHP, which is where I would like y'all to be as well, in one way or another. So that meetup is actually going to be hosted not here, but at Longhorn PHP in one of the rooms there. So look forward to that. So if you're already going to the conference, you don't have to go far. You're already there.
Show up for the tutorial day and then grab a bite to eat and then show up at the meetup.
If we shift the meetup to Wednesday.
No,
Tutorial day is Wednesday, right?
no, Thursday.
Oh yeah, it is Thursday. Why was it? Okay,
Because,
so
because we were talking about the other thing that might or might not happen that
Okay.
will probably also end up being on Thursday.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if there's some way we can combine the thing that may or may not happen with the meetup, but we'll see.
The thing that may or may not happen is earlier.
Yeah. So either way, if you're going to Longhorn PHP already, then you don't have much far to go. And if you're not going to Longhorn PHP, first question, why? Because you should be going. And yeah, that's all I got. You should be going, you should be there. But if you, for some reason, can't go to the conference, but can make it to the meetup, we'll still have you.
It's going to be at Commons Learning Center up near the domain. And there are tutorial day only tickets if you just want to show up with some awesome tutorials from various cool speakers.
Is it a 2-day thing?
So main conference is Friday and Saturday.
Okay.
Tutorials are Thursday.
Okay.
So right now you can get the tutorial and main conference tickets for $300, or $200 for main, $100 for the tutorial specifically. You can make it to one, but not the other. So besides the fact that you like California, yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be nice to have the meetup at the conference and potentially get some more people that aren't from the Austin area popping in and checking things out. Heck, maybe I can convince whoever's in town that is either already speaking or is not speaking but attending to be a guest speaker for the meetup. Who knows? Maybe. Yeah, all right, that's actually all I got. Y'all are free. Y'all can run away now. Hey, TJ.
So do a couple of you guys work at the Capital Factory, or?
No, so I used to work at a company a long time ago here at Capital Factory.
Okay.
None of them are here this time,
Okay.
but there's Review Push, the company that sponsored us, is like technically at the Capital Factory, but on one of their like special like 5th floor whatever shenanigans.
Okay.
But I don't think any of us specifically work here, like in the co-working or at or for Capital Factory. But we've been hosting the meetup here since 2013 or 14.
I saw in my Gmail, I was pinning on my Gmail today, 2013.
2013.
Yeah.
Jeez, it has been a while. And I haven't even been involved with the meetup for that entire time. I only started attending in 13. Yeah, we've been hosting here for a long time. We've traveled the entirety of Capital Factory for when we met, because we got moved around a lot. And then they created the first floor, and then we got moved down here. Which actually, like, it's just a lot easier to just walk right up. Here we are.
Rather than sitting there, like, yeah, you're on the 16th floor in some like random room in the back.
Yeah. Well, we used to be in the classroom, but since we don't have like 70 people that show up every time, they were like, you're going in the back. Back of the Capital Factory with you.
Thanks for the talk.
Thank you. Hope to see you again. There's a lot of cheese pizza. I'll let Eric know that cheese pizza is not necessary going forward. Because no one wants it, apparently.
I'll take one piece of the man.
Okay.
I haven't had pizza in forever, man. It's exhausting.
Yeah, I'm kind of in this boat where I'm debating, do I want to go home and cook dinner? I already know the answer is pretty much no. So what do I want to pick up on the way home? There's not a lot I can eat that's on the way home. So now I'm kind of debating if I want to get to my car, order my gluten-free pizza from Domino's, and see if I can get home before Domino's gets there. Try and achieve the perfect setup of park car, walk into house, doorbell rings, give me pizza. Excuse me.
So I haven't used Telescope. Is it like real time on?
Yeah, it is basically real time. Like I think if I remember correctly, a like artisan scheduled thing runs like every second or whatever behind the scenes to actually like do something with data. I can't like
Near real time, yeah.
Yeah, but it's pretty near real time.
It's pushed. Yeah, that's awesome, man. I'll have to check it out.
It's cool. We last year, but also last month is when we had our telescope talk, and it's pretty cool. Like, and to be honest, I did have like some issues with like having it show data. Like I configured it correctly and everything, and I was like, okay, perfect. That's it, done. Everything I want to see will show up, and then just some things wouldn't cooperate, but it was like a weird mix match where when I put it on the application in like production, like one of my for funsies apps, it would show certain data, but then locally it would kind of run, but not show the data that was showing in that one. So I'm sure I was just quickly trying to get it running for demo purposes and mess something up. But outside of that weirdness, it was still like pretty cool and handy to use.
Yeah, it seems really awesome that you can like just push all your analytics in one place like that.
Yeah, it's definitely
Plus
a
your
great,
debugging, plus like it's crazy.
it's definitely a great debug tool, and it does give you some like high-level analytics. But if you, for example, want to get some like high detail or high-level detail on your queue performance, that's where something like Laravel Horizon is definitely going to be preferred. scope.
I gotta actually start a Laravel application. Because I'm coming from PHP world, so most of it looks pretty transferable, so it's easier to, too bad. Yeah. But I figure why not just learn Laravel also. I'm working with a dude who uses Laravel at his company exclusively, so.
Laravel's pretty, of the frameworks I've used, Laravel's definitely been the nicest and easiest to work with.
Right. Yeah.
But Cake has a superior datetime library.
Yes, it does. I really am hoping one day Otwell will.
We'll use Chronos rather than Carbon because mutable date times are freaking annoying. They're like, hey, my date time just slipped out from under me, and now it's something completely different, and now I'm really confused.
Yeah, it's been pretty easy to catch up on. Like this is like this job is like my first software developer job, so I was able to just like roll in and just start working on stuff. And it was pretty intuitive to like get everything working, grab some of the ORM, display it in the view, do stuff with it.
Awesome.
Yeah, welcome to the software developing field.
My only gripe with the stack is we're using SQL Server, so
Oh,
we're using
sorry.
we're using like a legacy version, so we're using like 2012. So
sorry.
Yeah, so like I'm like
It's like SQL Server isn't bad, but
Also, why?
The brackets in the syntax, is that right?
well,
yeah.
there's like
Oh, yeah, that drives me crazy.
and there's like little caveats too. Like I'll find a bunch of examples of how to like.
And they're all for MySQL.
Yeah. So like on my where statement, I want to like filter out some data.
Oh
before I
yeah,
send
it doesn't work that way.
And it doesn't work that way. So then I have to go like look at Microsoft Docs and like spend a whole bunch of time in there, and like do it the SQL Server way, and then like set it. So it's just kind of like extra friction that I'll get around it. So.
Everyone knows Microsoft has the best documentation. Look, I'm waiting for the lightning.
Yeah, part of my job too is like to maintain some like legacy SQL Server reports or like add little features. So like I'm using like Report Builder 3, and it's so bad. Like I'm like, can I just write this and put this in the portal? And they're like, well, we really want it here, and we really want it in the portal. So yeah, it's just.
So Hunter, about the whole documentation thing, Microsoft now owns GitHub. GitHub has a whole bunch of documentation in it, therefore Microsoft has the best documentation because they own the best documentation.
That doesn't count.
Sure it does.
I never knew there'd be a market for just acquiring better documentation.
If you're rich enough, right?
Like, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be upset if I had Microsoft or Bill Gates level of money. I would definitely be upset if I owned Apple stock as of last night.
Yeah.
It's a good time to buy.
Yeah, I look at it, I'm like, hey, these are getting closer to Hunter prices.
I would say it's still not a good time to buy because Apple hasn't proved that they will get their head on their nether regions and actually build decent hardware again that will actually sell.
Yeah, I know. I was talking to Mika.
You still
I know
think
they've
Apple's a
had the
computer company,
internal
don't you?
talk of what's going on and all that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did enjoy Matt Trask's commentary on it today, though.
I didn't see that.
He just said asterisk points, just like Apple keeps raising phone prices. People doesn't buy new phones. Apple fucking repairs. It's just like, yeah, they're
It's like,
expensive.
actually, no, it's not really.
Are you on the Laravel Slack channel here?
I'm not, no.
If you're interested, it's a real good place for
I should get
information.
the plug back.
Yeah.
You should go to awesomephpchat.com and that will, there's an invite link into Slack that includes, among other things, the Laravel channel.
Okay.
And a random channel that gets the Wednesday frog post every Wednesday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll because I think I signed up for the PHP group too, for the awesome PHP group. Because,
Well, yeah, if you're in there, it's a channel.
Okay.
So yeah, you should be able to get it.
Technically, the general channel is the channel for that meetup, but
Oh, right.
The general channel is the general channel that occasionally gets a meetup announcement in it.
yeah. And then there's Laravel, which is both for our meetup and general Laravel. And funnily enough, if you do go to Longhorn PHP, there's a channel for the conference on that Slack. So if you already joined it now, you're pretty much set up and ready to go. You just got to buy your tickets to Longhorn and you're done.
Got all two channels.
Yeah, just get it all. I'm definitely gonna go to that one. It's, the guy I'm working for, I want to apply for one of, like, a company he's like a director at, and they're just like they're like, as long as you know Cake and Laravel, you're good. So I'm like waiting for the position to open. It's like rushing.
So, little sneak preview here. We will have a Laravel tutorial if the person responds back and says, yeah, sure, I accept the acceptance.
Okay.
Just saying.
Yeah.
That's your sneak preview. Now go ahead and buy your money.
Yeah. There's the tease. Ian, I need someone.
I get to expense that ticket too, so that's okay.
Oh, hey, even better.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know what that.
It's gonna be you guys.
Yeah,
Thanks for hosting.
Yeah, we're going.
See you guys. And switched over to my account that has my admin privileges, redid homebrew, etc.
Yep.
Rebooted and it now stops with my, did you hear the error message? Too many corpses created. That is
Like
it. That's the error
macOS?
message. Yeah, macOS, right. Anyway,
Hold on.
everyone is saying remove this one file, but it's a read-only file, and I don't know how to freaking move it.
As in macOS
As
is
in Mac
failing?
As in macOS what will happen, it'll come up and it'll get all the way over to the end, the bar, and then sit there and do nothing. It's actually putting out error messages saying that Open Directory, too many corpses created. So everyone is saying remove this one file, but when I get there, read only.
Reboot in safe mode?
That's what he said.
Well, yeah, let's see if I can do that because I've not been able to get into safe mode. Hold down shift, right?
It
It is hold down shift, yes. That is.
It's been too long since I've done this, so
Okay.
it should. If you're actually going into safe mode, or okay, what I'm thinking of is single user mode.
Okay.
And that's
where I was.
Okay. Then why is it still? Why is it still not letting you do stuff? Because single user mode, you're logged in as root.
You are root, yes. It's owned by Wheel.
Shouldn't matter.
Shouldn't matter, right? It says, do you want to override the Wheel, whatever, and I say yes, and it says, sorry, read only. So, yes, that is.
If it's. Oh, okay, hold on. So.
Yeah, get that brain working for me.
You may have to, like, in single user mode, shoot, it's been too long and I don't want to give advice because the last time that I've had to deal with something like this was like 4 years ago. And I don't want to break your computer more than it is right now.
Yeah.
I want to say that it's something to do with you have to remount the file system as read-write and then it'll let you delete the thing. Because I think what single user mode does,
-RW, I've seen that. That may be the.
It is, by default, it'll mount your file systems as read-only, and yet you have to.
Okay. That could be. I believe I've issued that command. Anyway, who knows? I've issued a lot of commands. Wrong. It's not the escape key. It's the power button. It's the other side of the keyboard. Okay. Well, let's just see what happens here. Okay. That. This. Oh God. What a. Computer just, well, for all intents and purposes, stopped working for what I needed to do at 2:30 today.
Yeah.
And I have just been doing this since.
Question is this a hardware issue? Because that randomly stopping and that sort of thing sounds way too close to a hardware issue.
Can you boot, I think it's, if you turn off the computer and go back on and hold Option R.
You want recovery mode?
Oh, hey. Yeah, like the recovery. Like, if you can go to the recovery partition, have you tried just telling macOS to reinstall? Because macOS OS is not stupid like Windows back in the day.
Yes,
So we just
that,
reinstalled
that,
the OS.
that is one of the solutions, but then it comes up and after I say install, it says, oh, I can't find the server, even though it's sharing off of my hotspot here with proper password, et cetera. But you're right, that was another item to reinstall with a new throwaway user.
I think that, I don't even think you need to do a user, because Mac OS will just reinstall the OS on top of itself, theoretically replacing the files that are now completely foobarred, and then hopefully that fixes it. I remember having to do that at least once or twice when I used to do IT, but that was close to 5 years ago now.
Right. Okay, yeah.
Good to
I'll
see
give
you.
that a shot, appreciate it.
Back in 5 years ago, back in the song.
Running the meetup, doing the thing, still going on, just different room in Capital Factory.
Yeah, I mean, keep saying
Different room,
Being
different
creative,
floor.
I love the era.
You still working at Capital Factory?
Yeah, I'm doing international.
Nice.
Actually getting to travel.
That's pretty cool.
Flying around the world.
By hiring people that have communication degrees,
Are they hiring people that have communication?
are you using the Royal U Capital Factory?
Yes, that's what I assumed that you were.
Yeah.
I mean, not specifically communication, but we're going to be hiring folks for our marketing department. So that might be something. Who are you guys?
My sister, she just graduated.
Your key?
Say that's.
Yeah, I mean, capitalfactory.com/career for jobs. If you go there, we just did our year end, and they're going to be hiring a bunch of good people in a couple different departments. So she thinks.
One fits. Yeah. She's off.
And the degree doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I mean, she's definitely going to be entry level no matter what, but it's.
It really depends on what she's looking at, what she's looking to do.
Yeah.
I would try and give advice, but
personally, so.
I'm too afraid of telling somebody else
Nobody
to
ever really
do
knows.
something that's
Exactly.
equivalent
You
to
just kind of fall
R/RF
into it,
star.
and you're like, I guess I'm doing this for the rest of my life.
Yep. She likes some pizza.
I would not. I just
Thanks,
eat
sir.
some pizza.
Yep.
I won't squeeze your hand, just like
This
that.
is.
Oh,
free.
It's a,
Okay, how did I not get that before? Let's read
I
this.
had some really good. I had some leftovers in my car. So already.
Nice.
I would not.
Fortunately, it's
I'll
very,
take
very,
it.
very,
No,
very
I
small
do not want this. I do not
manufacturer
want this in here.
from
I mean, we can give it out to the homeless
Dune Buggy
people on the street.
the Saturday before
I'm either gonna
Christmas.
do that, or I'm just gonna
So-
run back in the office.
So you heard it. You got a good story.
We'll
Yeah,
have to walk
it-
past the homeless people. So I might giving it out.
Could have been a bit worse,
You don't want to
but
You're fine. I'll
it
just read back
is
in the office.
annoying having
Totally up to
to
you.
Our
work around this when
salespeople
trying to,
are
actually
usually
type.
ravenous, so I'm
Yeah.
sure they'll enjoy
Can
the free
imagine.
lunch tomorrow.
Have to show up Monday and
I'm
say,
gonna moderate
so
this.
is the,
So you'll be seeing
am I
us
using the splint correctly? And then I
start games.
will show up the day after I get back from PHP Benelux to get x-rays and hopefully then get a clean bill of health at that point. And hopefully by then have full range of motion back.
Basically,
you guys are providing.
But you said it was just a small fracture?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, it's just a bone
Technically,
Just
the
or
whole
bone.
thing, and we still do is lead generation contractors, we're
She's not giving me confidence.
basically. Alright, so now it's gonna be more homeowner focused, but we still, they work hand in hand. Helping homeowners find professionals also in turn.
I think I can get over to
homeowners to do shit for work, so
Vodka and
it works out.
by 10 minutes.
I'll give you a ride if you can.
Cool stuff.
Might,
Hope it's
it-
good.
10 minutes, but.
It's fine, I need to get
You want to come in and leave so you can leave? I
Uh,
can just see if this thing will move.
sorta, kinda.
Okay. I can be mobile. I'll take some of that pizza if you are giving it away.
Yeah.
Or did you give it all away?
No, I've
Okay.
got sauce, one of these is sausage, one of these is a shit ton of cheese pizza, and then a lot of brownies.
I'll take the sausage.
Per off. Let's see, how do they order this? The old weight trick. Yeah, I can just let like 30 slices in there. Sweet, thank you.
So in conference-related news, one of the folks